In the shadow of the Great Pyramids, where the desert sand stretched endlessly toward the horizon, a quiet hum of life filled the air. The sun had only just begun to rise over the golden landscape, casting long shadows across the Nile's fertile banks. The river, wide and tranquil, glistened like a ribbon of liquid light. Its waters nourished the land and the people, sustaining the vast and storied kingdom of Kemet, the land we now call Egypt. Beneath the sky's awakening hues of rose and gold, a young boy named Setka stirred from sleep. He lay on a simple mat woven from reeds, his slender frame wrapped in a linen shawl his mother had spun. The scent of freshly baked bread and the earthy tang of the Nile's morning air drifted into the small mud-brick house he shared with his family. Setka's eyes fluttered open as the faint strains of his mother's morning song reached him, her voice soft and steady as she prepared the morning meal. "Rise, my son," she called, her tone gentle yet firm. "The fields wait for no one, not even the son of Ptah." Setka yawned and stretched, his dark curls falling over his forehead. At 12 years old, he was small for his age, but quick and curious, with a mind that often wandered far beyond the boundaries of his family's farm. He believed, as his mother often teased, that he had been blessed or cursed by Thoth, the god of wisdom, for his insatiable thirst for knowledge. Setka was not content merely to tend the fields or fish along the Nile like other boys. He dreamed of the grand temples and the secrets whispered within their cool stone walls. Setka's family lived in a modest village on the outskirts of Memphis, the heart of Egypt's old kingdom. His father, Horemheb, was a farmer, tending to barley and emmer wheat on a small plot of land. His mother, Merit, was a skilled weaver who crafted fine linen for trade at the bustling market. Setka's elder sister, Neferu, helped their mother at the loom and took care of their youngest sibling, a toddling boy named Ramos, who spent most of his days chasing chickens around the courtyard. Life in the village was simple yet rhythmic, tied to the ebb and flow of the Nile. The river was both a giver and taker of life, and its annual flooding, known as the inundation, was the divine gift that brought fertility to the soil. It was during these precious months that Setka's family worked tirelessly, planting crops that would feed them and provide offerings to the gods. As Setka dressed in his linen kilt and slipped on his worn sandals, he paused to touch the small amulet hanging around his neck, a carved image of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the afterlife. It had been a gift from his grandmother, who had told him, "Anubis watches over those who carry his likeness. He will guide you through the mysteries of life and death." Setka often wondered if the god truly listened to his thoughts, for he whispered to the amulet often, sharing his dreams and fears in the stillness of the night. The morning light grew brighter as Setka stepped into the courtyard. His mother handed him a piece of bread, still warm from the clay oven, and a small jar of date syrup. "Eat quickly," she said. "Your father is already at the fields, and you must help him before the sun grows too hot." Setka nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He had overheard a conversation between two priests at the market the day before, their voices low as they discussed a mysterious ceremony to be held at the temple of Ptah. The temple was the largest in Memphis, its towering columns and intricately carved walls a testament to Egypt's devotion to its gods. What intrigued Setka most was the mention of Pharaoh Djoser, who was said to have entrusted the priests with a sacred relic, a piece of the god's own wisdom. Setka, his mother said, snapping him from his thoughts. Do not let your mind wander today. The fields demand focus. Yes, mother, he replied, though his heart tugged toward the temple. The morning passed in the fields, where Setka worked alongside his father, planting rows of barley under the watchful eyes of ibises that lingered near the riverbank. Horemheb, a man of few words but steady hands, often glanced at his son with a mixture of pride and concern. He knew Setka was destined for more than the life of a farmer, but he also feared the dangers that curiosity could bring in a world governed by the whims of gods and kings. Setka, his father said, straightening from his work, you've been silent all morning. What troubles you? Setka hesitated, his fingers brushing the damp soil. Father, do you think the gods speak to us? Horemheb frowned slightly, his weathered face thoughtful. The gods speak to those they choose, my son, through dreams, through signs, and sometimes through silence. Why do you ask? Setka lowered his gaze, unsure how to explain the strange pull he felt toward the temple and the secrets it held. I just wonder if they would speak to someone like me. His father placed a firm hand on his shoulder. The gods see what is in a man's heart, not just his station. If they wish to speak, they will find you, no matter where you are. The words comforted Setka, but they also filled him with a sense of urgency. That evening, as the family gathered around a modest meal of fish and lentils, Setka found himself distracted, his thoughts drifting again to the temple. He excused himself early, retreating to his mat with the excuse of weariness, though his mind buzzed with plans. Setka lay on his reed mat, staring at the flickering shadows cast by the small oil lamp in the corner of the room. The soft murmur of his family settling in for the night surrounded him, but his thoughts wandered far beyond the mud-brick walls of their home. He imagined the towering columns of the temple of Ptah, the sacred incense curling upward in pale tendrils, and the priests chanting in a language so old that it seemed to vibrate with the very fabric of creation. His heart quickened as he thought of the Pharaoh, a living god among men, walking through those sacred halls. Sleep did not come easily, and when it finally did, his dreams were vivid and strange. He saw a great falcon, Horus, the protector of kings, swooping low over the Nile, its golden eyes fixed on him. The bird landed on a stone altar and transformed into a man cloaked in shimmering light. The man's voice echoed as though carried by the wind. Seek the hidden truth, Setka, for it is in your hands to protect it. Setka awoke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The house was silent, save for the soft breathing of his family. The dream lingered in his mind, vivid and unsettling, as though it had been more than a dream. He touched the amulet of Anubis at his neck, his fingers trembling slightly. Was this a message from the gods, or merely his own restless thoughts taking shape in his sleep? The next morning the air was thick with anticipation. Setka tried to focus on his chores, fetching water from the river, feeding the goats and helping his mother with the loom, but his mind kept drifting to the temple. By midday, he could no longer resist the pull. He approached his mother, who was weaving an intricate pattern into a length of linen. "Mother," he began hesitantly, "may I go to the market? I want to see if the scribes have any new stories." Merit paused, her hands stilling on the loom. She gave him a knowing look, one eyebrow arching slightly. The market or the temple, Setka? His cheeks flushed, but he did not look away. The temple, he admitted. I want to learn more about the gods. She sighed, her expression softening. Your heart is restless, my son. Go, but be mindful. The temple is not a place for idle curiosity. Setka thanked her and set off, his sandals kicking up small puffs of dust as he walked the well-worn path to Memphis. The city was alive with activity. Merchants called out from their stalls, offering everything from fragrant spices to polished alabaster jars. The scent of roasted fish mingled with the tang of sweat and the earthy aroma of wet clay. Setka wove through the crowd, his eyes scanning the towering silhouette of the temple of Ptah in the distance. The temple loomed larger as he approached, its white limestone walls glowing in the midday sun. Two massive statues of the god Ptah flanked the entrance, their serene faces carved with an otherworldly precision. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of myrrh and frankincense. Setka hesitated at the threshold, his pulse quickening. He had visited the outer courtyards before, but he had never ventured deeper into the temple. Today, something compelled him to step further. The inner sanctum was a world unto itself. The polished stone floors reflected the flickering light of oil lamps, and the walls were adorned with intricate carvings of gods and pharaohs locked in eternal communion. Priests moved silently, their linen robes whispering against the stone. Setka kept to the edges, his gaze wide with awe. Near the center of the temple, a group of priests gathered around an ornate altar. Their voices rose in a melodic chant, the words unfamiliar but resonant, like the hum of the Nile itself. Setka lingered at a distance, captivated. It was then that he noticed an older priest standing apart from the others, his gaze fixed on Setka, as though he had been waiting for him. The priest approached, his movements deliberate but unthreatening. His eyes, sharp and probing, seemed to see straight through Setka. "What brings you here, boy?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Setka swallowed hard, his hands clenching nervously at his sides. "I want to learn about the gods," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to understand their will." The priest studied him for a long moment before nodding. "The gods do not reveal their secrets to everyone," he said, "but sometimes they choose unlikely vessels." He motioned for Setka to follow, leading him to a quieter corner of the temple. There, the priest began to speak of the Pharaoh Djoser, the king who had united the land under the gods' favor. He spoke of the step pyramid, the first of its kind, built as a stairway to the heavens. But most intriguingly, he spoke of a relic, a sacred artifact said to contain the wisdom of the gods themselves. "It is said that the relic is hidden within the temple," the priest said, his voice low. "Only those deemed worthy may approach it. Many have sought it, but few have succeeded." Setka's heart raced. He thought of his dream, of the falcon's piercing gaze, and the words it had spoken. Could it be a sign that he was meant to find this relic? The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. The priest placed a hand on Setka's shoulder. "You are young, but the gods see something in you. Perhaps they have brought you here for a reason. If you wish to seek the relic, you must prepare yourself. It is a journey of the spirit, as much as the body." Setka nodded, determination hardening in his chest. He would find the relic, not for glory or riches, but to understand the will of the gods and his place within their grand design. The days that followed were filled with quiet preparation. Setka balanced his duties at home with secret visits to the temple, where the priest, whose name he learned was Khepri, taught him the sacred rituals and the meaning of the ancient carvings. Setka's family noticed his growing distraction, but Merit said nothing, her eyes filled with a quiet worry. One evening as Setka prepared to leave for the temple, his father stopped him at the door. "You have been restless, Setka," Horemheb said, his voice calm but firm. "What is it you seek?" Setka hesitated, then met his father's gaze. "I seek to understand the gods." Horemheb studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then go, but remember this. The gods test those they choose. Be strong, my son." Setka bowed his head in gratitude and stepped out into the cool night air. The stars above seemed to shimmer with an unusual brightness, as though watching over him. The temple stood in the distance, its silhouette dark against the glowing horizon. As he walked, a sense of purpose filled him. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it with courage and faith.